And now, folks, we will open up the second portion, the second part of this hearing for the preliminary plat, and I would entertain hearing from the applicant again on this, please. Preliminary plat, folks.
Your Honor, if I may, if you would gavel open the public hearing,
Oh,
I think.
sorry.
Thank you.
There we go. We are considered open, folks.
God, my ears.
Thank you. Susan Wilson, 208 South Main Street, Suite Number 2. Again, representing Thompson Development. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to try to make it quick because I suspect I might be back up here in rebuttal. And I think Garrett's going to take care of one of the issues. We do like to keep the Notting Hill name coming from north all the way down to Highway. I know sometimes city staff is recommending that it change, and there's been a request that the name of the street change from where the Notting Hill and Indian Hills Drive connect, because it changes direction and then down. And I know we've gone through this before, and just the name changing. We really would prefer to keep Notting Hill to come all the way down and connect, so it's a nice through street all the way through. If that is not your inclination, then we would like to come up with a different name for where Notting Hill comes down to meet Highway 8 rather than continue with Carmichael from the south. We've already kind of gone over the parkland. I think Mike has explained it very well, and of course Dwight is here in case you have any other questions. I would like to point out, I don't think, and I asked Dwight this earlier, if the city has actually adopted a parkland dedication that included the contribution of the developer's capital improvements along with the land. And you recall the ordinance was changed to allow that opportunity, and I think in part because of a subdivision like you might have here, where it is a little bit restrictive in the size of the property. Also, you're going to have across the hill, yes, but you're going to have Southgate 3rd Edition that has, you know, a rather larger park over there. So we felt that given what we were trying to do with this subdivision, that the parkland, along with some capital improvements that the Thompsons were willing to provide, and in this case, 3 times the fee in lieu of, depending on how you look at it, Walter, in regards to whether you include the lineal pathway, which initially we hadn't. And so when we made the proposal, that was, we thought more than what the fee would be, but it was something that Thompson Development wanted to do. So we'd encourage you to adopt the recommendation of Parks and Rec in regards to the parkland. And then, of course, in regards to the whole list of conditions that you see, our engineer has a very standard saying when he says it's just a preliminary plat. So I can't really speak to all of those engineering type issues, because those are types of issues that Jack Hammond with Headco usually takes care of in the construction plans, and sometimes it will be feathered out in the final plat. So you might see some modifications to the plat based upon his working through those issues with the city, but we anticipate that that there shouldn't be any issues. But I personally can't say that we'd accept all of the city engineers and city staff's recommendation under the conditions, because I don't have that expertise. So hopefully those will be resolved by the time we bring the final plat. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you. Oh.
You had a question?
A question, if I may. If we were to accept the staff recommendation to change Notting Hill's name as presented up at the 90-degree turn and bring it down as Carmichael, you don't like that?
No.
Your second choice is that if we do say it has to be changed at that 90-degree turn, that it becomes something other than Carmichael.
Yes, we prefer that Notting Hill comes all the way down.
I understand.
Yeah. So, but if it doesn't, then we would prefer to propose a different name that would start at the intersection of Ridgeview and Notting Hill.
You just don't like Carmichael.
We want to create the theme within this subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we will take additional testimony in favor.
Applicant is still. Get it.
I'm wondering who named Carmichael that Garrett doesn't like.
Yeah. Hey, guys, let's keep the comments down on Carmichael Road. We got the idea they don't like the name, so let's move on and see what Garrett's got to say.
Excuse me. Thank you again for this opportunity to get up here and speak. I just love it. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the temporary cul-de-sacs, or what were temporary cul-de-sacs. Back in the mid-90s, Ridgeview Estates was developed by somebody of the name Gary Sheldon, I believe, had no connection to us other than before it was developed, we did have a lease with him. We farmed the property just like how we farm our property there, and farmed the Flomers property right next door. If I understand the situation correctly, it's one of the only subdivisions in Moscow that somehow went into default, or they had to, I don't know what they had to do, but it wasn't a good
I'm
situation.
not sure I'm understanding what you're talking about. Is this talking about your preliminary
There was
plot
some
you're
money
talking about?
supposed to be left aside to take out those temporary cul-de-sacs someday
In Ridgeview 1.
in Ridgeview 1.
Okay, we're not talking about Ridgeview 1, we're talking about
But
this new
There's a
preliminary plat.
proposal to address the curb and gutters in those
That-
cul-de-sacs.
okay.
they want me to pay for it.
Okay, continue on. I was having a tough time following it. I didn't know if any of the counselors were or not, but I was, so.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so Ridgeview 1 was developed. There was some money supposedly set aside, or supposed to be set aside, to take out those temporary cul-de-sacs. Somehow the project went into default or something, and that money went to cover other things to get the project finished so it could be, sold and built on and so on and so forth. And so now, with us proceeding with our development of Ridgeview Estates Second Edition, one of the conditions, the city would like us to, do you have your little light thingy? Thank you. So right here, there's a temporary cul-de-sac, and right up here, there's a temporary cul-de-sac. And if I understand the city correctly, they would like me to put in curbs, gutters, and sidewalks across both of those temporary cul-de-sacs, and then the property that is the said temporary cul-de-sac reverts back to the two property owners that own the houses that the temporary cul-de-sacs are located next to. I guess I just don't really feel like that it's my responsibility to provide that. And I also have heard from the neighbors, and one of them has a boat, RV or something that he parks there and enjoys parking it there. And the other one has a basketball hoop and, invites the neighbors to come and play basketball. And I guess I just want to touch on that I don't feel that I should be responsible for that. And I would like that condition to not be accepted, but everything else I can live with.
Walter?
If I may, Garrett, not that you're speaking for those property owners, but your belief is that they would not mind those paved surfaces staying there?
Correct. I am not speaking on behalf of them at all.
Okay, but that's your
Yes.
understanding. And my understanding is that those are temporary easements held by the city, and that upon extension of Wild Rose and Ridgeview, those easements expire, and those paved turnarounds would be for the use and benefit of those property owners. I'm looking at Bill, I guess.
Is that correct, Bill?
That's correct. Those temporary easements that were granted in 1988 will expire when the roadway is extended automatically.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. Others that would like to speak in favor of the applicant? Any of those that would like to speak against this preliminary plot hearing, please come forward and state your name or general comments.
This is a general comment.
Okay.
I'm not against what is going on. However, I would like to state in the next
Bill,
thing...
please,
I'm sorry.
state your name, sir.
Bill Parks, 1630 Pine Cone Road. I and our neighbors have worked really hard on what is coming up next to make the park there a safer park, because some of you may or may not have remembered that Roberto Moreno spoke here a year ago or so, and he was a former forensic psychologist working with people in Texas who were criminals, and particularly he was also a profiler for the FBI on serial killers and serial rapists and so
Bill, what does this have to do with the preliminary plat?
It has to do with the fact that the problem that we worked so hard in our neighborhood was to get some oversight of a park. And here it looks like you're going to approve another park with absolutely no oversight at all. And as Professor Moreno said, you always say it can't happen here. And you don't bother with it at all until something happens. And then it's too late, and you can't do enough. And I'm disappointed in the city staff for not remembering what Professor Moreno said, and also Professor Wegman, Jerry Wegman over there, who used to be a assistant DA in the Bronx, talking about the necessity of having oversight on parks where children play to keep predators and murderers out of there. And here we have another plot doing the same thing, and we work so hard in our neighborhood to get this thing in the next one, and it looks like you've just ignored that completely. I'm disappointed in both the council and in the staff.
Okay. Further comments? Come on up, sir, and address your name at the podium, please. This is where we take all information right up here. State your name and address again, sir.
My name is John Harrell, 1257 Wiltshire, and I don't approve the proposal for preliminary subdivision of Plat. Notting Hill Drive is a drive that has a lot of single-family residences where a lot of children are playing out in the front yard, and that's the type of environment that it is. As we saw earlier today, we see 12,000 cars a day on that State Highway 8 in that rough area right there. He had it on his diagram where that was a residential area where he had actually shown that. It doesn't make any sense to have a road cutting through there from Highway 8 up through White or Joseph up through the roundabout there. That's just a lot of traffic that is not needed. It doesn't make any logical sense to have that cut through right there. On top of that, you guys have just approved the rezoning, which means that there's going to be a lot more residences, a lot more people within that area, along with over on Ridgeview Drive, Wild Rose, and the whole area off to the east. So it just doesn't make any sense to have a cut through there. I don't see any logical reason. People can go all the way down to Mountain View, go around it if they need to. It's not that far around. I would say not to have that extension up there on the subdivision plat. Have a bike cut through, that'd be fine. That way allow people to go from one area to another area, but it just doesn't make any logical reason to open it up and have potential accidents with 12,000 cars a day that might want to go through there along with the new subdivision and the rezoning. So I do not personally approve the proposal for the preliminary subdivision plat.
Thank you.
Question for Bill regarding the man's comment.
Okay, you got a question for Bill.
I'll try Bill first. Do you know if traffic volumes in the traffic study that we have included Notting Hill north of the ridge?
Yes, it did.
Okay, I can't sit here tonight and figure out what it all means. Can you, or do you have? I guess my question is, the gentleman's talking about a greatly increased volume of traffic because of this over on the north side of the ridge on Notting Hill Drive and Wilshire and down in there. Does the traffic study bear that out?
Well, it bears out that
I'm putting you on the spot, but...
Right. I guess I can't give you a real definitive question. The short answer is yes, there'll be increased volumes on Notting Hill. Notting Hill is a designated collector, and the comp plan does show it connecting on over to Highway 8 opposite of Carmichael. So That has been in the city's street plan for the last 5 to 6 years at least. So it was anticipated that that is a secondary connection to the highway, that it is a designated collector, and that it will see somewhat higher volumes than a typical residential street. I would have to look at the actual study itself to indicate, to give you how many additional trips were anticipated, and those counts were identified at the intersections. But you can reasonably expect that you have 9.6 trips per day per household in a subdivision like that, and you have the existing residences within Ridgeview First Edition that may wish to utilize this as a route into town rather than having to get onto the highway system, which would help reduce some of the volume on the highway. But the intent of the city and the street system was for this connection to occur, and Notting Hill is designated as a collector because of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir.